downsides, I designed and built Ocean Way recording studios in Los Angeles, and Ocean Way Studios in Nashville, and Record One Studios in Sherman Oaks, and welcome to Ocean Way.
Somebody wants to get in music production, wants to be a producer because they have some musical background, but they're more of an audio engineer or producer. But I know you have your engineers and your producers. What do they need to do to get to that point? Obviously, no amount of school is going to get you to that point, but I mean, how would they go about doing that?
I mean, specifically, how would they go?
Oh, okay. Let's say somebody wants to go to school to be a music producer. What do you need to do, at least, to get yourself? What do they need to be doing to train themselves, their ears, and everything they do? I mean, what would be the biggest thing you recommend? Buy gear. I mean, you know what I mean.
It's kind of funny. I mean, the way I approached it. I was a musician. I played bass. I played in bands. I did all that, and I love playing, and I love my instrument, and it's a lot of fun. But I was also a sound freak. Always, I was totally into the sonics of it. And of course, in certain respects, just by playing my bass, the way I control the envelope of every note, how I pull it, all that, it's the same thing. It's just really any different. It's just how I make it sound is when I record and I mix. And it's even when it comes down to instrumentation and arrangement, having space to hear things, a place to hear parts, and this and that. Another thing I would say is as a mixer, when I'm working with various producers, I have a concept that I think it always sound like a finished record. All my verbs, effects, everything I do, I think in terms always of a finished record. So as we're overdubbing to it, and you add a part, if it works or it needs that part, doesn't need that part, becomes immediately apparent. If you're listening to what you might call a rough mix, how do you know?
Right.
In the same respect, even if you're doing a vocalist and the person singing, they need to hear it the way it's going to be, so that when they sing, they're delivering their performance to what the record's going to be. And so I think that's an important thing as a producer. But there's different producers. Some producers are just great song pickers. They're great at picking artists. They're great at putting them together, and they make a nice record. Other producers are incredibly involved musically with every aspect of the arrangement and the details and the things. Other guys are very guitar-oriented, where they just know every sound imaginable, totally relate to it on that basis. They're musicologists. They know every riff and every song ever done. There's so many different levels of what a producer is. And it's not necessarily one model that's specifically the right model. As far as learning, I don't know how to say it. I started, once again, as a musician. I started from a technical aspect. I would say being proficient at Pro Tools is a valuable asset these days, because it just allows you to be efficient and quick in what you do. One of the problems I see also is that a lot of so-called engineers aren't really engineers. They're Pro Tools operators who really don't understand gain structure, microphone technique, and how to make something sound good. And that's a valuable asset. It's a valuable thing to learn. One of the tough things is there used to be lots of studios, big studios, where you'd have all kinds of projects coming and going. And so you start as a runner, you end up being a second, and you watch these projects going down. And there are just a handful of studios left that do that. And so, I kind of really didn't, I only worked for a studio for one summer. And really, as far as I started doing it by going out and doing live recordings with my equipment, going out recording bands live. And I pretty much did it all on my own. And I knew what I wanted sonically, so I just experimented until I got what I wanted.
Right.
So I didn't really ever go to any sort of recording school, or I just knew what I wanted, and that's the direction I had. I say it's a comment where you can't get there if you don't know where there is. But conceptually, if you have a place in mind and you're willing to fool around enough, eventually you'll find what you're looking for.
Well, a lot of times you'll actually learn more about the equipment and about yourself because you're doing it.
Yeah, how do I make this work? Or I love the sound of this record. How can I make it sound like this? Well, maybe you don't know how it's done, but if you start experimenting and messing and tweezing, you'll eventually probably get there. If you have enough stuff to fool around with, and of course, ask. Nothing wrong with asking questions.
Nope.
And most engineers producers are usually relatively nice. You run into them at the NAMM show or wherever else and say, "Hey, I love this one tune. How'd you do it? What's the deal? What's the prelude on the verb? How'd that work out? What's the all these different things." Ask away. Ask all you can. But especially, I say, find product that you like, and then you can sort of emulate that as a basis for a starting point. It's kind of what we did, like in our drum sample library we put out. My comment was, I listened to dozens of libraries, and I listened to all these libraries, and there'd be maybe one kick or snare I liked on an entire library. So I said, well, and also, it was like work in progress. The stuff didn't necessarily sound that great. You had to tweeze it into place to make it sound good. So I said, well, what if you had 18 or 19 drum kits and every kit sounded ridiculous? Ridiculous. Because conceptually where I come from, There's no sort of in between. I like things to sound impressive. So I got like 100 snares together and I don't know how many kits, and I personally tweaked and tuned every one of them. But the other concept was you got 18 kits and every one sounds shocking, but still what I wanted was a working model, meaning that I had 6 presets for every kit, from very dry to super live, that all sound like finished mixes. So you pick a kit, you pick a preset, and you add bass. And then also conceptually, all the levels of all the individual components come up separately, but all at a flat line. So you pick a preset that sounds good, then you add guitars, say, it sounds great, but now I need a little more room or a little more ambience, just turn the pots up. But you're starting at a place that's already sounds like a mix. And for somebody who doesn't have all that equipment in their place to get that starting point, just a raw library doesn't get them what they need.
Right.
It's like, Omar Hakim was at the show last year, and we showed him the drum sample library, and he's got a whole set up his house to record drums. But after playing V drums and hearing what it sounded like and hearing the variations, he says, I just put the mics away. Because he can get what he wants without, and it doesn't sound anything like a machine.
No, it sounds more natural.
Well, and also conceptually, everybody was sort of stuck in this format that they mic it as if it was mic'd in a regular kit in a Maker session. But all those micings are compromises because, of course, we have to isolate the individual drums from the rest of the kit. If you're just recording a snare, there's things you can do. Like we have 16 to 17 elements in just one snare sound. So there's different ways to approach it. That can be infinitely more oppressive, but still, and so I think I looked at it a little differently. And I found, years and years ago, this is like a long time ago, with the Synclavier, which was one of the first digital samplers, I was doing 100K samples, stereo samples on Synclav, making up my own programs and patterns,
Right.
and then overdubbing stuff. And then I would like Vinny come in and do maybe the hat live, because I could not get a hat to be sampled that period of time. It wasn't possible.
No.
Not and be able to get the articulation we needed.
The way you wanted it.
That's right. So, but the toms and the kicks and snares I could make sound ridiculous.
Oh, okay.
And I was doing that, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, and it took a long time to catch up to what that sonically was all about. And also, all my samples were always stereo. Kick samples and snare samples, not mono, they're stereo samples.
They have more
Right.
weight to them.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, again, Alan, thank you. We need to run, but